Good evening, everyone, as you are joining. Good evening. Thank you for attending our meeting for this evening, the Revitalization of Baden Association meeting. This meeting is going to be a little different than our previous community meetings. We do have MSD Project Clear coming to speak about the updates with the construction that is happening. So I will soon pass that over to our presenter, Saad, coming from MSD, but I do have a few announcements before we get started. This particular session, as I stated, is going to be a little different. So everyone is going to be on mute. Saad would have some instructions for you when their presentation comes up. But our two announcements that we have for the Baden community is that we have an upcoming trash pickup this Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. I know the city is going to be live with a whole bunch of Juneteenth events happening. So hopefully before you go to that event, you will come to help us to pick up some trash. We will have our starting location to be right there at the Viaduct where Schweitzer and Broadway connect, right there underneath the bridge where you will see the Dunkashane to Baden sign. That vacant lot that has the really tall grass at the moment, that will be our meeting place. So I encourage you to share with your neighbors and also your family members to come out. We will be providing gloves and trash bags, but of course, bring any other items that you feel you would need to be safe. And in addition, we will have light refreshments and water to serve to you. We will be cleaning up alongside Broadway and Schweitzer, depending on how far we get. But the goal is to pick up trash, count the trash that we're picking up. It is a citywide effort. So Dutchtown, Benton Park, St. Louis Hills, and other communities are also doing it, Fairgrounds as well. So Baden neighborhood wanted to participate. And then the next announcement is reimagining public safety in the city of St. Louis. So I am working with Policing Equity, Center for Policing Equity, and also the city of St. Louis, along with my co-host, Rhonda Smith Branch. We are going around the community to talk to individuals, residents, business owners that are in the city to get your information, your feedback, your input on the public safety recommendations. So we are hosting focus groups and one-on-one interviews until June 30th. The focus group and the interviews will take about an hour to an hour and a half of your time. And if you are able to participate, we are looking for people 18 years of age or older. In addition to that, it will be confidential. When you sign up, we will have that information, but when I say confidential, it will not be released out to the public at all. And for your time, you will receive a $75 gift card. So if you are able to sign up, I will put 2 messages in the chat. So during this time, please fill out the form so that I can connect with you later. But I will pass it on over to Saad with MSD. So take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
All right.
Perfect. If someone can't see that, I guess Tashara, just let me know. First and foremost, thank you so much to ROBA and Tashara specifically for working with us to give us the opportunity to speak with you all here at your membership meeting for this month. As Tashara mentioned, my name is Saad Amir. I work in the Public Affairs Division for MSD, and I'm going to be helping facilitate the conversation tonight with the project team, who you're going to hear from in just a second. But just to kick things off, before we move off into the next slide, one of the things that I wanted to point out here is the project name and project number. So we're here tonight to discuss the Baden Cityshed Mitigation Basins project, which is project number 12847. And that project number, if you do have questions throughout the process of construction, if you do note down that project number, and if you use it when you do have questions, it'll get you to your answer quicker. So make sure you jot that down if you already haven't. So moving directly into the presentation, So to give you an idea of what the roadmap for tonight's presentation is going to be like, first, we're going to talk about the technology and how to ask questions, how to engage with us throughout the presentation. I know Tashara mentioned that this meeting is a little bit different than your normal membership meetings with everybody being muted. So we do want to make sure everybody knows how to ask us questions. I'll briefly go over what MSD is, who we are, what services we provide, kind of give you the context, and then we're going to move into the project. We'll bring in the project team. They'll talk about the construction, why we're doing the project, what the project's going to accomplish, what the project's going to look like, things like that. Then we'll move into a discussion on restoration after we're done, what the area, what the neighborhood is going to look like once we're done with our work. We'll go over some of the frequently asked questions that we received. And then at the end, we're going to open it up for questions for live Q&A at the end of the presentation. So there's going to be a set Q&A at the end of the presentation as well. So on the tech, so there, like I said, there's going to be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So at that point, we'll go ahead and unmute. Please go ahead and just say your name. Just let us know who you are, and then we'll go ahead and take your question and take it from there. However, during the presentation, if you come up with a question, you will be muted, but you can use the chat feature. So if you're on a smartphone or a tablet, if you tap on your screen, if you wiggle your mouse, if you're on a computer, you'll see a menu bar at the bottom, and one of the buttons on there is a chat button. If during the presentation you come up with a question, go ahead and type it into the chat, and we'll go ahead and read those out at the end of the presentation. A couple of ground rules on those questions. So just in the interest of everyone's time, we're here to answer general questions about the Baden Basins project. So if you do have questions about another one of MSD services, something that doesn't have to do with this particular project, go ahead and type those into chat. We'll jot them down, and then we'll forward it off to the correct department or correct staff and follow up with those questions after the meeting. And then similarly, we do want to hear specific property questions, but just in the interest of everyone's time, we're not going to be addressing those live. So if you do have a specific property question about how this project is going to affect your property specifically, go ahead and type those into the chat. We have your contact information from when you signed up for the meeting, and then we'll have the project team contact you after the meeting to discuss that one-on-one. All right, moving into the overview of MSD. So I'm not going to read everything on the screen here, but this is we're here from MSD, the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District, also known as MSD Project Clear. A couple of things I want to note on this slide. First and foremost, MSD is not a private corporation. We are a government utility. So we're not, we're not like Spire and Ameren in that we have shareholders and things of that nature. We are a government agency. One of the things I do want to point out, though, is we are not a department of the city of St. Louis, and we're not a department of St. Louis County. We're a separate government agency, and we cover 100% of the city and then about 90% of the county out to about Route 109 in Wildwood. So we're a separate government agency, but our service area takes care of all of the city of St. Louis and about 90% of the county. You'll see a bunch of facts and figures on there about how big the district is, how many miles of sewers we have. All that really means is that last bullet point, the fourth largest sewer system in the country, which ends up driving the cost of our program. And the last thing I really want to point out on this slide is that graphic on the bottom, 2 utilities in 1. So MSD is one entity, but we provide 2 separate services. We provide wastewater management and we provide stormwater management. So wastewater is any water that goes down the drain in your home or business. That's from your dishwasher, your toilet, your sinks, your showers. All of that gets taken down a lateral, a house pipe. And that house pipe, that lateral, connects to an MSD sewer. We call that a main. All of that wastewater is then taken to one of our 7 treatment plants where it's treated and then returned back to the environment. Then there's also stormwater. So wastewater is one part of what we provide, and the other is stormwater. Stormwater is exactly what you think it is. It's precipitation that reaches the ground. Now, the reason why I want to mention this is because there's 2 kind of different systems that exist in St. Louis's sewer in MSD. And there's the separate sewer system where wastewater goes down one set of pipes and stormwater goes down a separate set of pipes. And then there's a combined sewer system, which is where we're talking about tonight. Your neighborhood and generally the entirety of the city and parts of Near County is serviced by what's called a combined sewer system. And what that means is wastewater and stormwater are traveling through the same pipes. Okay, so that's going to become important when we start discussing things a little bit later on. But this project does deal with elements of both wastewater and stormwater. But we'll talk about that in just a second. All right, so moving into the actual project. So at this point, we'll go ahead and have the project team introduce themselves. First up, we'll go ahead and have Andy, the MSD project manager. Andy, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and introducing yourself and your team.
Hey there, I'm Andy Day, so I'll be the MSD project manager for the project. So I'll be active on the job and be making visits out to the site. My email and phone number are there on the screen. Feel free to reach out. And I also have another gentleman working with me by the name of Mark Berry. He'll be the on-site inspector, so you'll see Mark around town pretty much every day. His phone number and email are there as well. And then we've got our contractor, Chris Understall, and I'll let him introduce himself. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Chris Understall with Understall Contracting. We'll be the main contractor on this project. We've done a lot of work with MSD and have a good relationship with them. Look forward to starting this project.
Thanks, Chris and Andy. So we're going to be hearing from both Chris and Andy throughout the rest of the presentation. You'll see their contact information on the screen. We'll go ahead and share that at the end as well, too. And moving on to the project overview. All right, so you all have obviously seen MSD's work within the neighborhood over the last several years. I know you've seen work being done. I know we've had staff at ROBA meetings before. You guys have obviously seen MSD Project Clear signs. So you can consider the work that was being done before phase 1 and this sort of phase 2. And so before, the work that we were doing was installing rain basins, detention basins in the neighborhood. And we're going to talk about that specifically, but this is the second phase of the project, where we'll be connecting those basins with storm sewers. So like I mentioned before, this area is serviced by a combined sewer system. And as you can imagine, when it rains, when there's a heavy rain event, all of that new rainwater is introduced into the wastewater system. And by definition, anytime stormwater touches wastewater, it's all considered wastewater, all gets taken to a treatment plant, and it all gets treated. But of course, when there's a heavy rain event, all of this water flowing in the same pipes sometimes overcharge the systems. And when the system is overcharged, the water is looking for a way to get out. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, that happens to be back up laterals and into basements or properties in general. And so the idea here that what we're doing with this project is connecting the basins together, separating the stormwater from the wastewater in this neighborhood, and directing it to one of the basins so that during these heavy rain events, that stormwater gets taken to one of the basins where it's held and then released at a regulated rate so it doesn't overcharge the system. So that's what we're doing generally with this project. Specifically, Andy, can you tell us exactly what this project is going to look like? What does it mean when we say we're going to be connecting all of these basins or directing stormwater to these basins?
So it's just a lot of sewer installation. So we're doing about 11,000 feet of sewer installation. So anywhere from 12-inch to 48-inch storm sewers. So that's manholes, storm inlets, curb or street inlets, and the associated sewers to bring all that water and direct all that water to the respective basins.
Perfect. And we're going to take a look at a map of that in just a second. But as we were talking about the benefits of the project, the reason why we're doing this project, as you can imagine, almost 11,000 feet of sewer, it's an intensive project. It's a big project. But the benefits here are that we're going to be removing that stormwater from the system, which should reduce the instances, which will reduce the instances of overcharged sewers, which ultimately reduce the instances of basement backups, of those sewers becoming overcharged and wastewater coming back up into basements. So taking a look at the map, and this is a pretty big overview. Of course, if you're not able to see all the streets, names, and everything, we do have a project webpage as well, where you can click on this map and study it a little bit deeper. But just for our purposes today, this is the map we're going to be using for this meeting. Before we go into kind of how construction is going to progress, one of the things I do want to mention on here is the timeline. So as you can see, construction start and construction end. I do want to preface this by saying that this is tentative. As you can imagine, you guys, I'm sure, have dealt with construction in this neighborhood in the past. There are factors outside of our control that do affect the timeline, weather, supply issues, things of that nature. And so right now we are This is the timeline that we have committed to starting in summer 2022 and tentatively starting in summer 2022, and the duration lasting for about a year and a half, ending in fall of 2023. So that's our tentative schedule at this point. You can expect construction activities begin and end at these dates. So Chris, at this point, I'll go ahead and bring you in. Can you talk a little bit about, this doesn't look like a linear kind of project, kind of looks like different areas. So can you talk a little bit about where we're going to be starting construction, and then how we'll be moving along as the project progresses?
Yes, thank you. If you can see on the map, lower right-hand side is the Frederick Basin. That's where we plan to start the project as phase 1. Then moving over to the lower left corner, Partridge Basin, phase 2, and then the larger one in the middle as phase 3. We will be exploring, trying to find utilities that may be a conflict. We may be doing that kind of scattered throughout the whole project in advance of actually laying the pipe. So you might see us show up, excavate a small hole to find some utilities and then cover it back up. That's common, especially in older neighborhoods where you have a lot of old utilities.
Yeah, that's a good point. So taking a look and trying to locate the utilities to avoid as many conflicts as possible. So we see the construction start date. We're not necessarily saying that you're going to be starting to see digging next week, obviously. So in this case, Chris, what types of activities can the residents expect to see in the short term? Things like flags or things like that?
Yeah, there'll have to be some surveying done so that we know exactly where the pipes are supposed to go. And that will then tell us where to dig and to look for the utilities. So the very first part of the operation will be to make sure that we don't have any conflicts.
Right, perfect. And so, and as I understand it, before work starts, residents will be receiving notifications before work starts on their phase. Is that correct?
Yes, anybody that's adjacent to the work will receive a letter in advance to let them know we're coming.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. All right. So as I mentioned, I kind of referenced this a couple of times. We've had staff at meetings before, not necessarily for this specific project for Basins before. I believe some of the work has been done with ROBA as well. We've done a lot of coordination with the St. Louis City with permitting and working with staff in the city as well. And of course, those of you who've been to ROBA meetings, we've attended ROBA meetings, staff has presented at ROBA meetings as well. So this shouldn't be the first time that you're hearing about this project. It's not the first time that we've actually reached out about this project. So now talking about what you can expect in terms of how the project is going to be constructed. So I'll take the first 2 points. The majority of this project is going to be constructed through what's called open cut construction. And what that means is digging through the surface of the ground to a certain depth, getting to the depth that you need to replace and install pipe. However, so that's an open trench that's going to be there. That's going to be along the roadway or in the roadway. However, there is a section under Hall's Ferry where to prevent disruption to traffic at the intersection, and also because of a certain utility complex within the area, instead of digging that open trench, the pipe will be installed through what's called tunneling. And that's when you dig beneath the surface of the ground, and that's to prevent disruption at the surface. So those are the ways that it will be built. But in terms of what you can expect, Chris, can you talk first a little bit about some of the equipment in the neighborhood that's going to be coming through here?
Yeah, we'll have a variety of equipment, excavators and compact loaders. And as we progress down a street, we'll only have a small portion of open trench, because as we progress, we put the pipe in the ground at the exact right position, and then we backfill around it, and then we move on. So as we move, the streets will be completely backfilled So there's only a small portion that's open trench at a time.
Okay, yeah, so we're not talking about the entire street being open for the duration of the project.
Correct.
And then in terms of, so we are talking about open trenches. So Chris, in terms of access issues, obviously there's going to be some spots that the work might have to cross some driveways and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about those access issues and what the procedure with that is?
Yeah, there may be limited access to a driveway on a particular day for just a short amount of time, and we'll always restore conditions so that people can access their driveways and their homes after work hours.
Yeah, yeah, and so you know what Chris is saying with that is, of course, there will be either backfilled or plated, so you restore access to get back into your property at the end of the workday. However, if you do have specific concerns, the best bet, your best bet, is to reach out to the project team. The contact information that you saw on the screen and will come up again in a little bit as well, and let them know about specific concerns. That way, the team can work with you, the contractor can work with you and work those issues out. Obviously, they know they're being disruptive to your normal everyday life, so they're trying to lessen the instances where it's as annoying as possible. In terms of that as well, access issues is one thing. Of course, a lot of this work is being done in the streets. So Chris, can you talk a little bit about traffic impacts as well? Any projected lane closures, road closures, things like that?
There will be lane closures. We'll have a traffic plan that's approved and we'll adhere to it. There will be some places on the smaller streets where we may close a certain section of the road as long as we're able to get access from either end. But that section will move as we move along laying the pipe. So there won't be any particular street that's closed for any length of time.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Chris. All right, to give you sort of a visual representation of what an open cut project looks like, you can see here before, then during, so you do see open trench fencing around it. It does pass the driveway over here, but then afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about restoration in the next slide, but as you can see, restoring it to at least as good, if not better, conditions than we found it in. So this just gives you a representation, visual representation of what open cut construction looks like. Then moving on to restoration. So at a base level, the contractor must follow all local and district requirements for restoration. But to talk about that a little bit specifically, Chris, can you talk about restoration on this job? I know we're going to be, doing a lot of work in the streets and things like that.
Yeah, once we get to a particular point in a stretch of pipe and we're able to test the pipe, then we'll make sure that everything's compacted, and then we'll replace pavement, sidewalks, whatever we have to in that section before we move along. And we may very well have several crews working on this job since it's kind of spread out, so that we can restore quickly behind the construction.
Great. All right. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and move forward with our frequently asked questions. I'm just going to go ahead and ask these questions from our experts. Chris, on this, are you expecting any trees to be removed as a part of this project?
There are just a couple trees, but it's really limited because we have so much of the works in the street, so there aren't many trees.
Right. And then that second one, I know we've discussed this before in this presentation, but will there be access issues to driveways or properties?
There will be just small disruptions that we'll coordinate with homeowners to make sure that they can get in and out if they have some sort of handicap needs. We'll accommodate them to make sure that they can get in, whether it's putting rock down or a plate down. We try to be very aware of people's needs.
Great. And that last one, are you expecting any utility disruptions? Are folks going to be able to still flush their toilets, use their showers, things like that?
We don't expect there to be, but sometimes it happens. These days there are a lot of utilities in the ground, and one of the problems we have is that the company that locates and puts marks on the ground tells us approximately where utilities are. They're having a harder and harder time figuring out exactly where these utilities are. So occasionally we find a utility that wasn't marked that they didn't know was there. So there's always a possibility of a disruption of gas or water or something like that. But that's why we come in advance and do potholing, dig down and try to find utilities so that it's not a problem later.
All right, perfect. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I did see a couple of chats, nothing particular. Did see one from Randy Barnes on here. No street completely closed. So I believe you're asking if there are going to be any streets that are going to be completely closed as a part of this project. Chris, are we expecting full street closures, temporary street closures on any of these streets?
Yes, we may have some temporary street closures as long as there's a way coming from both ends of the street to allow us to do that to make better progress. But if on some of these streets that are dead ends, we won't be able to have street closures. We'll always have to be able to let traffic by.
Right, so there will always be emergency vehicle access to Amazon delivery drivers, things like that.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, I see people are utilizing. Okay, great. So at this point, if you would want to use the chat, go ahead and use the chat to type in your questions. Tashara just let me know that you do have the ability to speak. So if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. We just ask that you go ahead and just say your name so we know who's popping up, and then we can take your question from there. So feel free to unmute and then ask any questions or use the chat. Okay, while we wait for, oh, sorry, go ahead, anybody?
Yeah, it's Randy Barnes, Chris. And I may have spoken to you already, or Andy. I spoke to one of your guys down here on Baden Avenue. Right? Let me put it like this. There's a puddling of water. So even though you're not finished with the project, and I didn't know how much more you got to do in this particular area, but right here on like the 1000 block or 1100 block of Baden, there's a storm drain, but then there's the way the road is not level. There's a puddling of water that's like 10 feet away from the storm drain. So I don't know if somebody had visited that or cited that. I know I spoke to one of your guys one time. He mentioned that before everything was through, somebody was supposed to come in and pave the road and level it out so the water would drain appropriately. But, the way the road is, somebody might have to raise it up kind of bit.
Yeah, so what we'll do is you said it was the 1000 block or 1100 block of Baden Avenue?
Yeah, 1100 block of Baden.
All right, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and note that down. And since it's a specific area, we'll go ahead and follow up on that afterwards. You said you already spoke to somebody that was out there surveying, I'm assuming?
We were doing the rest of the project over here.
Okay.
Trying to dig out and make way for the drain. I spoke to somebody because even after they had almost completely finished with the stage that they were at, we had a couple of rainstorms and then there was a little bit of puddling. It wasn't serious because I didn't catch it till the next day when I drove down that route and there was a puddle of water, but I'm thinking, what can we do about it?
Sure. We'll go ahead and follow up with you after the meeting. Thanks, Randy. All right, I did see one from Robert on here that I think will apply to everyone. If there are any utility disruptions, how will this be communicated? Chris, I'll go ahead and throw that one to you.
Typically, the disruption in utility is like a cut cable for cable TV or something like that. But whatever the utility is, we contact that utility immediately, and normally they have crews that come out and do immediate fix, even if it's temporary. That they're pretty responsive. All the utilities are.
All right, thank you, Chris. I did see another one. It is sort of a specific question. Are you expecting any work between Switzer to Veronica in the Riverview Boulevard area? Is there any work on there? Let me go ahead and go back to the map so we can see. If you do have a specific question about this, we'll go ahead and you can put the into the chat. We'll go ahead and follow up with you afterwards, but we can throw up the map and see if there's any work going on in that particular area. While we wait on that one, here's a good one from Antoine. Andy, I think this one I might throw to you first, but if you need to defer to Chris on this one. Will you notify the bus companies that pick up our children? So at the bus stops.
That one stumped me a little bit, Saad. We can certainly chat on that one.
Yeah, okay.
I know there's some notifications we do make, and we can certainly chat with the city. I know for street closures, there are parts of the permits, and various groups of people are made aware of that. We can get back to the details on that, but we can certainly be accommodating and do what we need to do.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy. Antoine, I do have your contact information. I'll make sure to share what we find out with that with you and with Tashara as well, so she can share it with the membership. Okay, Kimberly, I'll go ahead and write down that request. We'll see if there's any specific work going on in the streets you mentioned and follow up with you afterwards. Let me go back to the all right, thank you to Antoine and Kimberly for your questions. Appreciate that. All right, if there are any more questions, feel free to chat them in. A couple of things that I do want to mention on here, you'll see Chris and Andy's contact information. You'll also see the project webpage on the bottom. So we are recording this, and my plan is to go ahead and post this video of this presentation up on that webpage on the bottom there. So if you do have neighbors who weren't able to make it to this presentation, feel free to share that link with them, and this recording will be on there as well. It also features a bunch more information about the project, the maps, things like that.
I think we have 2 more questions in it.
All right, perfect. Okay, Marsha asked a question about programs or resources available to homeowners and landlords that will help them pay for MSD repairs in the home. So that one, since it's not about the project specifically, I'll go ahead and address that one after. Marsha, I'll talk with you specifically afterwards when you're talking about MSD repairs in home. Although there are a couple of different programs that I can point you towards as well. But I'll follow up with you after the meeting. And this last one is also a specific property question, specific area question. Will this project put a heavy load on McLaren? Antoine, we'll go ahead and follow up with that as well. But like I said, if you go on the webpage, you'll be able to see the project map, which will show you all the areas that we are putting in the sewers. Okay. Thanks for that extra information, Marsha. All right, I have your email. I'll make sure to follow up with you after the meeting. All right. Okay, I'm not seeing any more active questions. Like I said, if you do come up with any other questions after the meeting, feel free to reach out to the contact information you see on the screen or visit the webpage to get more information on the project. With that, I think we are done, Tashara. I'm ready to hand it back over to you.
All right, if no one, just following up one more time, if nobody else has any other questions, I'm going to mention the 2 announcements that I had at the beginning, but I want to take a pause really quick to see if there were any other questions. All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording for MSD.
Thanks.
So give me one